Easy, what's happening, man?
Doing good. Just it's always pretty wild and crazy out here in these metaverse streets. Nice to connect for sure. It's been a while.
Definitely, it's been a while, man. Uh, if people don't know, this is EZinCrypto, one of the longest running community people that I knew about. Always, he runs me down his schedule a couple of seconds ago before I hit record here, and he's like, "Yeah, I got 100 things going on right after this." like that's par for the course for what I know of Easy's lifestyle.
Yeah.
The most metaverse guy ever. How's everything? First, before we even get started.
Things are pretty good. There's always something to be like, worried about or whatever. Markets are down. I try not to let that stuff affect me too much because, I've seen quite a few of these cycles.
Right.
And like, if you look at the big picture, we have growth across the board with,
Mm-hmm.
people coming in. I do a lot of onboarding myself.
Yeah.
And so to see, so many people coming in to, music space, more like literature, comics, film coming in, dance. Like it's great to just see so many doors opening for people. And the markets, they'll go up and down. There's sometimes outside forces or just general economics, and I think crypto has been, a little less tied to some of that in kind of phases. And so, I have a lot of faith in the long term of what
Right.
we're doing over here in Web3. And, of course, there'll be some, platforms that go down. There might be coins that, fizzle out, but in general, I think there's a lot of strength. So I think we good. Hopefully we'll see a little pick up and then people will feel a little better in
Yeah.
general. But
It's
yeah, I
funny.
try not to let like the charts get to me and stuff like that.
It's funny you bring that up because I'm out the other night and I'm talking to a guy that is not in this stuff at all. Not interested. But when you mention it, there's this half smirk now that comes around. This they used to not be there. Because they feel that us lazy crypto people are now getting our just dues, if you will, because the money's down. And I explain to people that when you work in the industry, you don't feel that because you feel like we're in a growing industry. I'm seeing so many things in the NFT space. So many more people are understanding the underlying technology. That's where we're trying to get to, and that's where we've always been trying to get to. Now, in the middle of
Yep.
that, if some prices go crazy, I mean, no one's gonna fight it, you know. So that's how I felt, But it's funny because I talked to my buddy, he got married recently, so he had that conversation about 100 times over. And same thing,
Yep.
you know, uh, half smirks, when he says, I'm into NFTs or whatever he's doing, and it's just when you understand what's going on, it shouldn't be a big deal. I mean, if you should have done some studying before this, you know. If you just bought something for it go up, it go down, you might be in trouble. That might
Yeah. Yeah.
but when it comes to like uh, understanding what's going on, totally in the larger scheme of things around here, I'm totally fine with what's going on, and I'm just getting ready for the next cycle. If anything else, get myself more embedded.
Yep.
You know, you as well,
Yeah.
obviously, because
Yeah.
you got 100 events scheduled every 5 minutes. So I mean that's
And
great. That's what
these like these kind of down times, we've always been like buy the dips, not financial advice, but that's what I try and do. I'm looking at stuff that I feel like has really solid value. And even if it's just like a few bucks, I'm like, oh, I can pick up a few, Tez or Sol or whatever it is, ETH,
hmm
while it's down,
hmm
because that's an opportunity if it's something that you really understand and really feel like, oh, this has like a really strong future.
hmm
Then generally like the big boy investors, they're gonna say, buy when there's blood in the streets, and that's
right.
what they've been doing for, I mean, a century or more.
You
So
know,
it's a psychological thing almost more than anything else, kind of getting over that and having the broader understanding like you're talking about. And then you see interesting stuff come up. There was the WAG die, which is like we all gonna die NFT that dropped a couple of days ago. I don't know if you saw that.
no,
Um,
what was that?
but stuff like that, kind of like gets hype and goes crazy. It was like, we had like the Goblins free mint and then this thing, and it's interesting to see what hits in this kind of like
That's what I
more
was trying
like
to tell people before. I was a part of that first run, and when I was, kind of getting into the market, I'm seeing a lot of my friends that were here since 2017 who are down on their money, but then certain little things happen during this what they call bear market, because it's not just down, just like it's not just up during the bull market, you know. So if you're in the game and then you're able to say, hey, look at this little piece of information, because you're in the game, you have skin in the game, and you have understanding. So you're saying, oh yeah, there's a little opportunity here. I don't have a ton of money maybe because I'm down from what I used to have, but I can be involved in that, and then next thing you know, that could do well, But when you're not around, and when you just thrown your hands up and said, no, it's all over, and we're moving on to whatever you're gonna, next stock you're gonna buy, or next thing you're gonna, opportunity you're looking for in the regular world, then you wouldn't be around for those kind of events,
Yep. And yeah, chasing the money is just going to kind of lead you in a cycle. Whereas if you're looking and kind of grabbing onto like really cool ideas, strong communities, and that's another thing is by being around, by just being here. And I often tell people, when they're kind of getting into the space and they're like, what should I do? I'm like, just be here, just hang out, go to Discord, events, go to Twitter spaces, listen, ask questions, go over to club, like wherever you kind of feel comfortable. And then you find people that you kind of vibe with, and then you just hang out and you start absorbing and you learn the terms and you start asking questions. And then you might have, more of an understanding and people to support you with like what you might get into. Or by having, those relationships throughout multiple communities, you hear about those cool little possibilities that come up, even if we're in a down bear market. And also it's like when everything's hyped, there's so much going on. Everybody's kind of banging at the door. So in these slower times, I think that, most of the people that I know and kind of run around with and build with, it's like build time. You just get back to focus on like, the main thing that you're trying to build.
Like I was always saying, like when everything's going crazy, it's a lot harder to work, to get down to business. But then during these times, it's like, this is the times when you get back to getting down to business. I started the podcast. I'm like, it felt like it was time, and that's just to me, that's just how you go about it. When things are going crazy, it's you got to enjoy yourself a little bit, So you go and do that, and then get back to work, Now I want to get into. The podcast is based on kind of like your experience in the NFT space. I want to talk to you about your beginnings, because your beginnings is really based in as I understand it, based on like community. You were one of the guys.
Oh yeah.
And so I'd love to hear like the story of where you were prior, and then how you got introduced into the NFT space.
Yeah. So I first got interested in crypto in like 2017. Of course, there was a lot going on back then. Everything pumped, everything crashed. And that was kind of my introductory atmosphere. So it was already kind of crazy. But on the way down, and when I started learning specifically about certain coins or chains, and I was like, oh, this sounds like a really cool idea. So, and most of those would, be classed as like shit coins or whatever. But I was, doing research and like, oh, I'll pick up a few of these. I'll pick up a few of those. And so that was where I very first started. And then I think it was like late 2018 when I found Cent. And I had never done a lot of, social media platforms. I never really found like a lot of great usage for Facebook or Twitter. And back then I had tried like probably like Steam It and like, a few other things. I was checking out like Medium and wrote a few small things over there. But when I found Cent, which was kind of this experimental social media platform tied to Ethereum, where people could put up like bounties in Ethereum, and you could, maybe it might be a question and you might be able to answer that and win that bounty, or it might be, design me a poster for this podcast or product or whatever. So it was a really interesting way where you could earn a little ETH and reward other people with a little ETH if they were able to kind of help you out.
Mm-hmm.
But really, it was just a very open, positive, supportive place. And I had never had that kind of like experience in social media. So I was like, this is amazing. I got really into it. And a lot of the kind of OGs out there in the space did connect and sent in those early days, 2019. We were, a lot of us were over there, and that was when NFTs were starting to get more, traction, have a little more visibility. And when I first learned of NFTs, I mean, that's what really blew my mind and got me like super excited about this space, because, the possibilities were just endless in this new way to kind of package media and interact with it. Even back then I was thinking of, digiphysical goods and all this, and how, you could tie real world items back to like blockchain. I mean, me and a buddy Elbow, who's another old Cent OG, we'd go on walks because we grew up close to each other and talk about this stuff. And we'd be like, yeah, man, like a sculpture that you have the NFT and you have the real one, and then you scan it and it's like dancing, or, just like whatever crazy ideas we could think of. And now you see stuff like that kind of coming to fruition. And so that also was, there was such an open environment, and some of the early people that were, actually getting some traction with NFTs. Josie Bellini, shout out Connie Digital, dropping the way early music NFTs, some of the first stuff. Yeah. And so having, a direct conversation with those people, either on Cent or just like, oh yeah, hit me up in the DMs if you have a question or something. That really opened the door for me to be able to kind of share my art. And I'd been doing photography all my life, and I was doing a lot of like posting. I did a run of every day I was doing sunset photos, and I was down in Costa, because I'm back and forth between Costa and Cali. Yeah. So I was doing all these like paradise sunsets was what I was calling them. And so, after that, and kind of talking to more people about, my photography and stuff, I just got like, kind of pushed, supported, and like, yeah, you should make these into NFTs. And, when I was younger, before kind of I got into like my adult careers and stuff, I thought it'd be really cool to have, my photography in galleries or sell some, but it just seemed like a very far away dream, like not really for me. But what the NFT community really did was open the doors for me and kind of help, push me along to start making some NFTs. And then, you make your first NFT and you're like, oh my God, wow, it wasn't that hard. Like, yeah, the tech back then was a little harder too. It wasn't quite as easy. And I definitely goofed up on my first one. But, after getting through that, and then like having some NFTs up and having some people support and buy them, it was just, such a positive experience. And so as I got more and more into it, and the community started expanding, we had more platforms, I really just started to focus on kind of returning what I had received through that, information, open doors, super, honest, open feedback. And so, I think that being part of the groundwork and foundation of these communities has been one of the, best parts of the space, just that positive, collaborative engagement. And so that's really what kind of got me started, and saw this, kind of, we didn't even call it Web3 back then, but this whole Web3 revolution was so powerful. And so, ever since then, I've just been in it deep.
Right. And so I've seen you like take exactly what you're just saying. Like the early days, I always felt it was so much easier to talk with anyone, because everybody was just so into it, and we were such a even more niche than it is today, even though I still feel it's pretty niche, so you would be able to contact almost anyone involved, and they would deal with you. They had time for you, I've seen that you've been able to kind of take that and kind of show the next generation of the community kind of our lingo, not necessarily that it's exactly, because we got more people. It's tough. Some people have been really, really successful. Some people just don't literally have the time, but, I've seen how you've been able to kind of like show them the way we go about things. Like, it's very open, very inclusive, and people are willing to teach. Kind of like each one teach one type thing. So I really commend you on that, because not everybody has been able to do that. I even stepped to the background a little bit at one point when I was working mainly in Decentraland with a couple different people. you know. But then I kind of felt like I had to do something else, you know, and that's why I'm doing this, you know. But tell me about like your multiple different things that you do, podcasts and things. I honestly I want to know, because I don't even know if I know all of it, you know.
Yeah, there's probably some little sneaky goodies in there. In fact, since we're kind of on that onboarding tip, I'll start with Key to Crypto, which is just kind of a group of people. Shout out to Kinshasa, founder of Cipher.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Lorenzo Masna, who does the Street Punks.
Mm-hmm.
We actually, I think it was 2021 Bitcoin Miami,
Mm-hmm.
where me and Kinshasa were both there, and we both met this dude Lorenzo randomly, separately, apart.
Mm-hmm.
And then like that night, like I had brought him up. I was like, "Oh, I met this dope graffiti dude." And he was like, "Oh, Lorenzo," and I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Yeah, I met that guy too." And we were talking. So one thing led to another. He's originally from Colombia.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just had this idea of going down to Colombia and doing like an onboarding, like a couple days of onboarding in a little show.
Yeah.
So we wound up like just being like, all right, we just got to kind of do it. And we just did it, decided like it was like a couple months after we met. We're like, okay, we're going down. Lorenzo had some friends down there with like a community center, a bunch of street artists and stuff. And so we just went kind of run and gun. And we wound up spending I think we did like 5 or 6 days of like onboarding courses at cafes and the little community center and stuff with all these different street artists, musicians, rappers, like skateboarders, painters, all sorts of stuff. And we had a really big turnout. It was in Medellin, Colombia, and it was one of the, earlier NFT kind of, it wasn't even really a conference, but, we were kind of first to bat down there. And we didn't even really know that until we were down there.
Right.
But we onboarded a bunch of artists, like 30, 40 artists that were able to mint their first NFTs. So we would help, get people set up, teach them how to set up their MetaMask, teach them a little bit about safety and that seed phrase and things like that.
Yeah.
And then we would have, help them mint their first NFT into the Key to Crypto collection. And we had a few bigger, more well-known artists that also had stuff in there to kind of bring some eyes over there.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did about a week of onboarding. And then at this community center, which was really dope, there was like a little recording studio, art area, clothing, a skate ramp in the back. So like we built up over the, the week, and then we did this, over the weekend, we did a couple kind of, like art show party things, and the people were able to have their NFTs up for display. A lot of people showed up talking. We had like people skateboarding on the ramp out back. We had virtual graffiti being painted, projected up on the walls out there. And it was a huge success. A lot of people made their first sales, got really excited. And then, then they're at the point where instead of minting, getting help minting into this collection, they're ready to fire up their own collections, right? So it was really effective and just kind of spread like wildfire. So from that, we got invited down to La BitConf in El Salvador, not El Salvador, brain fart. Is it El Salvador? Who just adopted Bitcoin?
Yeah, El Salvador. Not just El Salvador.
Yeah, it was El Salvador. La BitConf El Salvador. And so we went down there, and they basically brought us down, and like we did the same kind of thing. We gave talks, we did onboarding, we did some live art there with some artists we brought in that painted these surfboards, wound up getting auctioned at the end of the Bitcoin conference. And we're like, selling these physical pieces that had Ethereum NFTs tied to them at the Bitcoin convention. So it was fun. And we raised I think it was $90,000 for like a children's hospital, which blew us away. We didn't have any idea people were going to be bidding like that. Yeah. 10 grand, I think, for some of these surfboards and stuff. So, that has been really exciting. And it was great to kind of feel like we were successfully being able to go around and just bring more people in. Mm-hmm. So that's something that, after that, we went to Mexico and did another one. And we've kind of been on a little hiatus this year. We're hoping by the end of the year, we'll be able to fire some more up and do some more traveling and onboarding. So that's been, a really, really awesome project. But yeah, I do, on the weekly, I host, I don't know, like half a dozen shows or something. Right. I have a Monday show in Token Smart that I call Easy's Corner. Mm-hmm. And so I'll bring on a guest, sometimes two, and just, it could be a gaming project, it could be a music project, a fashion project, a DeFi, like anything. I'm just interested in you know, talking with people that are making you know, cool product and building community out there. So that's pretty much just like across the spectrum. Get a lot of different people that come in and talk about their projects there, and then usually we have some like a little after party with some live music. Actually, a friend, Jose Cabrera, who's down in Venezuela, often comes and plays us live music, and then sometimes it'll be other people or a DJ, but usually some cool live music there. So that's Monday night show. I do every other week. Actually, we do a Wednesday night MVMF show. So MVMF is the Metaverse Music Fest, and that's a project that I worked pretty closely with. And last year, at the end of the year, it was actually right before NFT NYC, which was, the MVMS was Halloween weekend last year. And so it was basically like 72 hours of straight music across, you know, like 5 different metaverses. And we bit off a little more than probably we should have for the first one. And we were like, we're going to have this like a real world kind of, you know, festival, and you have to choose like if you're going to catch this act on this stage or that act there, but it's in this metaverse versus that metaverse. It was pretty wild. We did, you know, panels and discussions. We had like circus, actually from Venezuela. A bunch of Jose's friends did like the circus act and stuff, and recorded that and sent it in. It was wild. And big shout out to, you know, like Natalie Crew, Mighty 33, My World. Actually, the idea for that came out of the Mighty My show directly after the, 2020 New Year's Eve music show in Token Smart. They did like a 16-hour run of music for the New Year's. And after that came up like, why haven't we done a giant music festival? And so that, you know, was some pretty good months in the planning. And we pulled it off fairly well. But this year, I think we're going to tone it down a little bit and do like a couple days, you know, maybe 12 hours per day or something. But we're just kind of in the planning stages for that. And in the meantime, to kind of slowly crank it back up, we're doing every other Wednesday a couple hours of music. So we'll bring on like, you know, maybe 3 musicians and a couple 30-minute sets and then an hour set. So that's always fun to get more, you know, more people finding the Web3 musicians out there. Let's see, Thursday we do the Token Smart Cipher. So Cipher, one of the things that I did back on Cent was, and this was like probably like early or mid 2020, I did this rap song, and I used to freestyle a lot with my homies, my friends back in the day. We would freestyle all the time. Yep. Sometimes it'd be playing to live music. Sometimes it would just be over beats, or wherever we were, you know. So I had a big love for hip hop and freestyling all my life, but I hadn't freestyled for a long time, and I just got the itch one day. I was actually in the car driving to San Francisco, and so I started just rapping into my little memo recorder on my iPhone, and there was like some good lines in there. And it was a lot of just like, it was kind of like a crypto rap. I was shouting out homies on the Cent platform and stuff. And so then I did a little recording. I had a friend kind of make a beat for it, and I shared that through a Cent post, and people were like, yo, Easy, we didn't know you rap. Like that's super fun and like cool, should do more of it. And then I got to thinking like, what if we could do like rapping in the metaverse? Like not necessarily battles, but maybe battles, but just passing the mic around and like literally being able to freestyle together in the metaverse, and the tech just wasn't there. We tried hopping into, you know, crypto voxels and holding down V, and someone else like with a boom box trying to play in tunes. The lag and all that, it killed it. But that sparked an idea. And so Vandal at DAO Records, shout out to Vandal, super OG. He opened up a chat in his Discord called Rap Battle, or Metaverse Rap Battle, or something like that. So people that kind of had an interest could talk about it there and try and figure out, you know, how could we bring this together? And there were some of us, you know, people were chatting in there a little bit. And then it kind of died off. We didn't quite have a solution. And then, you know, after 6 months had gone by or something, it was a little over a year ago now, Kinshasa reached out to me, and he was like, yo, you ready for this like Metaverse rap stuff? And I was like, oh yeah, what you got? And he had, you know, been working with Yusuf, a developer, to create, and James, this like crazy musician, genius tech guy, to build this basically engine that creates beats algorithmically. So you hit a button and it creates a beat. And the idea is that you could, mine for beats. Then, the next step is you hit another button, you rap over that. You get a little bit of kind of control. It's a little mini DAW. And then the third step is that it would have generative art. So it was actually a GAN trained on graffiti. So we call it spray GAN, basically a bot that eats graffiti and spits out new graffiti. Okay. So once you've, got your beat, rap over it, generate your graffiti, all that's left to do is give that track like a title, a little description, decide on the price, the amount of editions. And we used the lazy minting on OpenSea basically to get it up in the Cypher marketplace at no cost to the artist. So that was, largely about bringing down barriers for people to be able to enter the space. If you're into making some collectible hip hop. So he told me that idea, and I was like 100% in. And so it's been a really cool, crazy adventure kind of working over the last year with Cypher, and just, being able to host these, metaverse ciphers. We go in and we have twice a week. So Thursday, which is what got me started on this, we do a cipher in the Token Smart Discord, and then we also do on Sunday in the Cipher Discord. So a couple shows Monday, then Thursday we do the cipher, and then after that I have a show that with Lad City called Easy Street, and that one's been running for, I don't know, a year and a half or something, which used to be in the Discord, but fairly recently, maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago, we're just trying it out over in the Twitter spaces to see if, maybe we reach a different crowd there or something. So I do Easy Street and Twitter spaces on Thursdays at, 6 p.m. Pacific. And then Friday morning, back over in Token Smart with Page DAO, which is another great project that's, similar idea to Cypher, kind of bringing down the barriers for entry into Web3, but for literature. So amazing team there. Again, Epic Dylan came from the old Cent days. He was on a podcast of mine where we were talking about, he's like a philosopher and a writer and all this stuff. And he had done a book dropping it like chapter through chapter on Cent, like a chapter a month or something. It was really cool. So he came on my old Cent podcast and we were talking and got to talking about literature and like the idea of having the, maybe a Library of Alexandria with all literature on the blockchain, so it's like there forever. And this turned into then Whip Publishing and Page DAO. So Friday mornings we do what we call Pass the Pen, and that's a community collaborative writing event. So it's basically just like a crazy free fall for all. Anybody in the audience can offer up ideas. Now we do usually have like a theme or something. In fact, more recently, we've been working with other projects. So we brought in Bitlectro Labs, super awesome project. And we wrote this like super 80s story about these punk kids that get sucked into a video game and have to escape. And it's all tied in kind of with like Pizza DAO and the mozzarella string theory, which is like the theory of everything in this universe, all tied back to like pizza and tomatoes and cheese and stuff. So super funny, just wild stuff. Yeah. This week, we'll be finishing up with Fly Frogs and Rizzle. And so we've come up with this whole kind of, world of the Fly Frogs, and the on-chain chain is worked in there. And it's like kind of this like mystical piece of like ancient tech that can kind of unite the metaverse. It's just a lot of fun. So super creative.
I always felt
and then that would get us to Saturday.
Like that,
It's super fun just seeing what, the community and the people that come over from the project kind of inject into that. Sometimes there's a little background lore that can kind of lead us. Sometimes it's just like we had the Chris Graves project come on, and they do like really high-end like photo book NFTs. And so that story was about like a time traveling vacation writer or something. And that was all just generated from a few pictures that we posted. And so it's really interesting to see how we get to these different places and like what kind of like ignites those ideas, and then where it goes from just the different people that are there in the chat and that hop on mic with us. So really fun stuff there.
One thing I've noticed with you is you speak Spanish pretty well. And
claro que sí.
Yeah, right. And I don't, but it's been really helpful because you've been able to kind of internationally onboard pretty easily, pretty like naturally. I used to be there in the early days when Jose would play, and I'd sit there and listen. And when he was working with maybe like a less advanced technology, where he was just working at it, he was doing his thing. But you were really good about being able to kind of like bridge that gap between the English speakers and the Spanish speakers. And you have a huge, there's a whole, like you just mentioned, a whole bunch of countries that that are Spanish speaking, and now it's a lot easier for them to know that they can speak with Easy. They can be on these things, and and the way you do things is very community based, and like I said, inclusive, and it brings everybody in. So that's great, because I think that it opens your avenues up, and it seems like you don't ever stop.
It's been a long, like, crazy push, bro.
Right.
I will admit that. And the Spanish is I'm so thankful that I'm able to speak Spanish, because it's opened some doors for me to be able to open doors for other people. Like, that's partially why I was able to be effective traveling around Latin America, is because I'm pretty fluent in Spanish. And there's so much talent, there's so much passion down in the Latino artistic community, and that's a lot, like, and that's a big part of the globe, like, and so also, like, quite often, unfortunately, in a lot of the Latin American countries, the economy is pretty rough. So, like, I feel like it's really important to be able to reach people that are in the circumstances of they're artistic, they're passionate, they're creative, they want to learn this, but it can be hard to. And there's more and more, there's like Language DAO and some other organizations that are coming up to try and get more of the, the onboarding and educational content into more languages. And I think that's super, super huge. It's gonna, we talk about kind of Web3 as being this equalizer, where we're leveling the playing field some, and where you don't have that intermediary party taking a huge chunk of value, but you still need to be able to express that, explain that, and give resources to learn the tech in the person's native tongue. So I think that as we have projects working to translate a lot of the documents out there, create new content, whether that's little videos or whatever, to be able to get it out in every language we can. And I think we're going to see a lot of growth coming from the Latin American communities, specifically, like, just from my own experience.
Yeah, and that's what that's what really, like, it hits a point for me, because like all this bear market stuff, we talked the bear market and stuff earlier, and it's like I don't really see it in that way, because I see it in the way you're seeing it. You got all these new people coming along, learning the tech more traditionally, I would say, to me, like, native to what we know, but it's not native to the regular person in out there, where you come in, you learn, you become part of a community, you then take your skills and go do something with them, and then it's the whole thing kind of starts up again. So you got all these people coming from different countries now, and they're learning, they're the OGs in those countries. Like, we had our opportunity to, in the earlier days of NFTs, to kind of be the OGs, and to learn from even the more OGs from us, the Matthews and all these people, but then we were able to take and go do something else. And so now you've got these guys come in, and then they're going to be able to, in their native tongue, then go and be able to explain to others. 'Cause that's really what you're looking for. You want everybody to be, like you're saying, even the playing field a bit. It's a lot of information to take in, about NFTs, about why you're even doing any of this stuff, or why you're using the tech and stuff like that. But then once you get it going, now you can take your knowledge and go into your actual community in the real world, and then go and spread that.
Yep. Yeah. It's kind of evolving as it grows, and like it like I was just saying, it has been a crazy busy the last 3 years, I would say, have just been like run and gun, working, building community, onboarding, full schedule. And what I'm kind of hoping for, I guess, is that like a year from now, there'll be so many of these seeds planted that have matured into new onboarders, that I won't really have to be out there doing it as much. I'll be able to go back and just, work on more of my own art. Of course, I'll be super involved in communities and still be onboarding, but I don't think it'll be, as each, kind of generation that comes in and learns the tech and then spreads that gets wider and wider and wider. So you've got more people planting these seeds, and it's kind of like, at some point it's just going to hit like, wildfire status, and it's just going to take over. And at that point, it's like some of the people that have been out there working to try and onboard and stuff will be able to step back a little bit from that, because there'll be so many other people doing it, just naturally as this, progresses and grows. So yeah, it's been a wild few years, but I'm thinking, by a year out from now, it'll be established enough, and there'll be enough people out there kind of doing this that I'll be able to step back a little bit from that role and have, maybe a little free time, some time for art, and just like, having fun, producing, making more raps, getting back more into photography, because it's something that I just haven't had a lot of time for, as I've been, working, trying to help get, various projects off the ground, and help build community, and be out there onboarding. And I think, another really important aspect of this, and I think we're getting to the spot now where there's a large enough interest base and communities kind of all over, is getting those on the ground, bridging the kind of metaverse and Web3 to the regiverse, what I call just the IRL. And so I see more and more, and especially, we had the lockdowns for years, and you couldn't really do that very easily. Right. But now with things opening up and the growth, the amount of people that have been entering the space, I think those on the ground kind of, whether it's something that's happening IRL that gets streamed into the metaverse, or it's just your local, cafe, your local little gallery or whatever, doing get-togethers there, is super important, because again, I've done a lot of onboarding both virtually and on the ground. But when you're on the ground with someone, and you can kind of, you see their eyes, you see their body language, you're able to rephrase something if you see it didn't quite hit until it lands. And then, after, a couple days of maybe getting together and talking about this stuff, boom, the light goes off, and they're like, oh, so I can do this. And then they're thinking about what they can do with it, versus just trying to understand it. So it's kind of like the fast road in, if you can be actually, physically with those people too. So I see more of that, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, like I definitely had that experience. I went to Vegas, go hang out with Open NFT, and he's got a Las Vegas Meetup out there, and spent the time out there hanging out. And then I came back for another one, and it's just like, when you see somebody in real life and you're telling them, like, we're talking about this stuff, and where it can go, and how you can actually use the technology for yourself, in one way or the other. You're saying that their eyes light up. It's a whole different thing. And you kind of like, when I was going there, you had a lot of like people that were there. They're pretty early, but low, it was in the middle of, when it was going well. So it was like, they were early to the things, they were making money, but they were late to the technology and understanding, But you were able to take some of those guys and say, hey, it's great that you're making money off of whatever you're making money off of, but then, there's also this is what the future looks like for us, and you want to be a part of that, because no matter, I don't say no matter how much money you make, but the money is not the end game. The end game is to be able to use NFTs in some sort of way that is helpful to the growth of the whole metaverse, and just in general the future of technology. I have these conversations sometimes with like the people who are not interested in Web3, and I talk to them about what it can be and what it will be, because going into the future, I talk about the 3D internet a lot. You have web pages, and to me, I feel like that'll look like something kind of a relic in the past, in the future. When you go in, like, wow, you were looking at a 2D webpage, like, for what? That kind of, mentality. It's hard to put that on somebody, though, because when, I'm talking to this guy as an old mechanic the other day, and I was trying to reference, like, the old mechanic books. And he's like, but I've still got them. I'm like, yeah, but the new guys don't want them. It's not like a young mechanic is like, where's the, I need 20, Bible size, car books about every single car. And that's what it used to be, And so I was explaining that, in the future, maybe it would be a lot easier if it was just a 3D model of the car, and then you can break down all the pieces,
And you could have embedded, let's say you have, because we talk about this at Page Down stuff for say for your books at college, university, whatever.
Yep.
You're paying like $500 a book, and then they give you back like $50 or something. Like, so just in that example, if it's an NFT, there's no devaluation at all. You could have a pool of these books that you have some tokens that get you books, you put those in and out. Afterwards, you sell the token off to someone else. They can get the same book, swap them in and out as they need them. For a mechanics book, instead of having those stacks of, okay, here's the Volkswagen van, here's the Toyota, no, you could have basically an NFT that has the information on, whatever make and model or brand. But then you could also, like you're saying, have these diagrams. You could click into that and have a video that literally shows, somebody replacing this part or something. So it's so much deeper when you look at like, literary NFTs, instead of having, something on your Kindle or whatever, that you can't, gift to someone else that God, what do they call them? The web books that we have right now. You buy that, you can't give it to someone, you can't sell it, you can't put it back into a pool and maybe take another one. But with an NFT book, not only can you do all that, stake it, like all sorts of different stuff, you can have the audiobook attached as an unlockable. You could have video interviews. You could have that give you access to a digital book signing in the metaverse or a workshop with that author. Like, it just goes on and on and on. So, it's definitely, and whether people, even call it the same thing in the future or not,
whether it's called
kind of
NFT.
irrelevant.
We were talking about the lingo. It's gonna change.
Yeah.
Whether people aren't saying NFT no more, or if it's not NFT music, NFT audio, NFT literary. You wonder what it's gonna be, because it needs to flow off the tongue, especially for people who are, newer. And we're talking about newer, maybe within even 4 or 5 years from now, they're still new to this concept.
Yeah.
What I think ends up happening is you have like platforms that come along, the Xeroxes of Web3, who say, okay, we made this platform, it's so useful that you now call it like Google, like Google that,
Right.
Yeah.
The brand becomes like the kind of catch-all for that technology. So things will change like that, and I think it'll be we'll get to a point like gaming is talked about a lot. Like back in the early days, I think one of the earlier kind of gaming projects I found was Engine. And they were early in, they were building, but it takes so long to build like games that people kind of got like, oh, well, when? And they're like, soon. And then, a year later, it's still like soon. But so as this gets more embedded, as not like a specialty technology, but is used more across the board, eventually people won't even really know what's going on behind that video game. They just know that instead of the old days when you had an asset that only works in one game, and if you stop playing that game or it goes away or whatever, that's all just gone.
Right.
People definitely be appreciative whether they know about the history of NFTs or any of that, when they're like, oh, I can take this sword into another game. I can sell this on a marketplace that's, either in game or out of the game, something like an OpenSea. That's gonna, I think eventually we'll get there where, you don't really have to know as much about the tech, and your onboarding might be a lot less technical. And you'll just be able to get the functionality out of that because it'll be worked into things on the back end. I mean, eventually, I think that's where it'll be.
That's when it becomes like, this is a convenience to you. Like now you can just take all these different things and they're more available at your fingertips. And those things can give you access to things that are even more helpful to you. Like you talked about college books. If you had college books in that way, then you'd be able to like log into something. They know you have the book because you have to have the ownership of the token, so then you're now you're able to access, let's say, the classroom, because the classroom might not be looking the same as it used to,
right.
So
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, and where we are now, yeah, it's still the early days.
Mm-hmm.
We say it often, and we've been saying it for years, but it's still super early. So, when people do come in, sometimes they, because of kind of the what is in the mainstream media for the most part is like either FOMO or FUD. So that's all
Yeah,
they kind
seriously,
of
it's
know,
only one
right?
or the other. Yeah, bulls and
Yeah,
bears, and there's
there's
nothing
no
else.
like
Yeah.
they don't talk about like functionality of anything. It's either like, oh, this crazy thing sold for millions, or like NFTs are dead and everybody lost all their money or something. But like when and shout out Kane Mayfield for coming up with talking a lot about onboarding with culture. So
Mm.
instead of just coming in and saying, yeah, you could make some money here, and often that's where people start the conversation. Is like, and not always, but a lot of people come in for a specific, kind of artistic purpose. But in general, the people that aren't necessarily going to be making NFTs come in and they're often looking at it like, oh, well, where can I make money? What's an NFT I could buy and then resell? And it's like,
Mm.
well, that's not a great way to come in because there's no way to guarantee what project's going to do what. I mean, once you have an understanding, and then you look at the teams behind a project and things like that, that can give you a sense of where value is long term.
Mm.
But trying to kind of break that mental cycle of like, oh, like what's the next big thing? What's the NFT that's going to blow up? And say, well, step back a little. Let's find something you like. So what are your interests, and then go with that
And
instead.
something you
And
find useful that like I can actually
yeah,
use this. And when you understand how to use something within this space, within the Web3 space, then you have a better understanding of what it is. Totally. Like my first introduction was Decentraland, and for me, I understood. All right, that you have this 3D virtual world. All the plots of land are NFTs. I can use this. I know how to use this. And, that was you were able to take that information and say, okay, now I see why this would be helpful, and you know, this platform is makes sense, and that platform makes sense, and that platform really doesn't. And you can sometimes, and it's not perfect. I got so many NFTs that did go bad, and but the thing is, on the other end of that is you have ones that did really well because that's just the nature of something that's so early. You know.
yeah, yeah. And the like for you coming in kind of into Decentraland, that leads once you kind of have an understanding of like some of the functionality and what you can do here, then that leads to all these other experiences and broadens your understanding of other types of NFTs and
Mm-hmm.
what other spaces are doing. So I really do think it's important to get people to come in and instead of just focus on the money, which we've talked about a little. Of course we want to earn, we
Mm-hmm.
want to make money. Like we've got families to support and bills and all this stuff. Like it's not just like, oh no, it's all for just peace and love.
Yeah. No.
There's a lot of love out there.
Mm-hmm.
The financial part's important,
Mm-hmm.
but it is a different paradigm. It's not just financials first. It's kind of like creating long-term value, building tools that are useful, connecting with people that you wouldn't be able to connect with before. Like I've got so many great friends, deep
Mm-hmm.
relationships, that I've been lucky enough to build through this community, through across the world,
Mm-hmm.
in these virtual spaces, and then super awesome when we get to go to like NFT NYC and hang out in person with these people and stuff. But there's so much value there besides just the financial end, that I think it's really important to try and point that out to people and let them find or help kind of push them in the right direction so they can link up with people that they're going to get more out of it than just a financial return. And hopefully they do get some, financial freedom, whether they're, an artist and they get more creative freedom and that leads to more financial freedom. That's amazing. And I've seen that.
Mm-hmm.
And, being able to kind of be your own, often, let's say if you're a musician or something and you're signed to a label, well, they kind of have a say of what your look needs to be and your sound and all this. So you're kind of pigeonholed into like a certain look and sound. And then they're also taking a huge part of the profits that would come in through your, sales and shows and whatnot. So by being able to have the community be the label, the people, your fans, your friends, the people that collect your art, like you're able to have a lot more freedom on that creative end too. And then, you know, we talk about this often, like at, you know, Cypher and Twitter Spaces and stuff. The old kind of paradigm of, you know, we went from CDs to MP3s to NFTs is what we say over to Cypher. And that's just giving back power to the musician, to the listener. And if, you know, say you're streaming what, like 75,000 streams on Spotify, I think is like $240 or something. Well, you got to reach 75,000 ears. If you have, you know, a small fan base of 100 people maybe, or 25 people, they're just like diehard, they love everything you do. You could sell, you know, 25 NFTs at $25 a piece, and you've already doubled or tripled what you have made from the streaming. Not that you would stop streaming necessarily, like that's not. People also come in often and they're like, oh, well, if I start doing this Web3 like NFTs, and for some reason they think they have to stop doing everything else, but not at all. It's throw everything in there, you know, still try and reach people. You still got to do your marketing. You still got to, like, you know, be out there, be out here in the space and do your virtual shows in Decentraland and crypto voxels and in the, you know, in the discords and all that. But it's just a whole nother avenue to explore for possibly better earnings, possibly more freedom, meeting really cool people. And there's, you know, there's also like streaming platforms, Audio, Emanate, you know, great platform, great community, paying artists out at a better rate, and like being, you know, available to like withdraw at any time. You know, those things are pretty revolutionary for the music industry, especially.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I can definitely see things going that way. I think that at some point you would get companies coming in and throwing packages together, you know, and they'll say, you know, hey, you know, come in and do your music, and you know, we've got your NFT package put together, and then they start taking percentages off the top. But yeah, right now it's like very like you can it's a lot like you can connect directly with your fan base and vice versa in here. Whereas, you know, I think in the mainstream, it's a very weird paradigm right now where you gotta get some sort of like recognition from the mainstream platforms or the mainstream people who do that, like record labels and such, you know, and then you can kind of like go forward and you know, you're not directly connected to your fan base because you're connected to these people who have you know, control of.
They're the gatekeepers, so they like, and you already have to. That's the thing, is like, if you're starting out, if you're an underground rapper or something, you ain't gonna get the time of day. They aren't giving you studio time. Like, you'd have to come up with money to put out. Whereas in, you know, in this space, if you've got a computer, you're pretty much good to go. So it really does, you know, turn things around a bit. And it just takes that, you know, I think that putting the time in, having that effort, finding the people you connect with, and that can lead to some success. Which is, you know, we just haven't had these kind of opportunities before for a lot of the little guys. And so that's something really exciting too. You know, we talk about leveling the playing field. It really is, because anybody can pretty much come in and launch a cipher track, for example. Like, we've had people, Kim Mayfield, Louis C. Rhymes, Anna Diario. We've had people come in through Cypher and kind of either get back into rapping because they've been fed up with the way things are done over in Web 2 with the old paradigm and the labels, and then having like no touring for years. Like, all this added up to where, like, you know, someone sees an opportunity where they can come in through crypto and, you know, drop a track at no cost. Well, if they sell those out, make a little bit of money, then that's a great springboard to be like, oh, well, I'm going to buy this piece of equipment I needed to be able to produce at home. Or maybe you do go into a studio and have something really polished come out for your next NFT. So it's, you know, even just getting in, it's something that is not like super fancy. You can kind of use that as stepping stones or springboards. So that's, you know, that's a way I think a lot of, you know, the artists that aren't super well known, whether that's visual or a writer or a sculptor or a dancer, like, you have that entry without a lot of barriers. So that, you know, that's one of the great things about the freedom of the space.
Definitely. And, you know, that kind of goes back to it being really early. I was having a thought earlier when you were talking about that, and I'm thinking like I base a lot of like my like historic knowledge, let's say, in this space. I'm not talking about in general, but in this space, and also I guess you can kind of go in general too, because the early days of crypto, you know, which I believe we're still in, because I go talk to people, they're not really fully understanding what crypto is or does or why it exists. So I still feel like you might be another couple of cycles out from crypto being so mainstream. Now you go back in the early days of IBM and all this stuff, in the early days of Apple and stuff like that, and you see some of these guys talking. It's like the famous one with Steve Jobs, you know, where he's like talking about he's like when the Apple price goes down, I buy more Apple. You know, and it's like it's a very classic video that he of him talking about it. It's like in the early days, there's so much speculation back and forth that it becomes this either bulls or bears type mentality. You know, not understanding that if you think about like the 20-year time span, we're sitting here talking today. You know, I'm not on an Apple. You might not be on an Apple, but one of us is on something like that went from very little back then to what it is today. You know,
Right.
if you were stuck around, you know, maybe you were gambling back then. I call it gambling. You know, throwing some money on it back then, and now you know it goes down. And you're like, this thing's over. You know, computers are stupid. You know, whatever. But down the road, it's like a very integrated technology into all of life. Everyone uses it. There was a time not that long ago that you would have never thought your grandmother or your mother, well, you know, the older people in your family, to be using computer technology. I'm not talking about any of this stuff, you know. And I know people, the kids wouldn't even concept this. But there was a time when I didn't think my father would ever learn how to use a smartphone, and now he does, you know, because
That's
he
crazy.
had to.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
And so just in our lifetimes, like when I was a kid, I remember when computers came out. Basically, my dad was into like technology and stuff, so he had like, we had Apple too, and you couldn't do a lot. You could do a few little games, and then it came like a little more like Load Runner and Pitfall, and like some of that stuff came in,
Yeah.
which was super amazing back then. But if you think about it, over what, like 30 years, it went from nobody having a home computer to very few to now pretty much everybody has a couple, like the cell phone, the iPad, or the laptop, and almost everybody has a super powerful computing device, at least within a smartphone. So if
Exactly.
that's globally saturated, then I'm thinking blockchain, NFTs, Web3 is gonna do that. It makes so much sense. It's such a better solution for so many things that it might be 10 years out, 15 years out, but it will be where most businesses are using blockchain for their whatever it is, tracking and payroll, and the products have NFT versions, and you've got your wearable, real world stuff, and you've got the same in the metaverse, and
Exactly.
all
Yeah.
this stuff. It will infiltrate. I mean, we do have big brands, like you had mentioned earlier with like you're looking at a 2D website. Well, back in the day, maybe even barely 20 years ago, it was like, oh, the internet websites, like, nobody's going to do that. We're all
Yep.
going to stores and we all have the phone book. Why would you need the internet, right? Like a yellow pages,
Yeah.
like
It
nobody
was
has a
thought to
yellow
be
pages
ridiculous, you
anymore.
know. Yeah. It was at one point it was thought to be ridiculous because the technology was slow too. So it wasn't just that the internet was stupid. It was the internet is slow. How are we gonna use that? I'm not gonna sit and wait for there's a comedian I just found. His name is Stavros something else. I can't remember his last name, but he was talking about, he's like, you don't know what patience is until you were downloading a porn picture, and waiting 25
Line
minutes
by
for that thing to
line. Yeah.
figure. That's I think that
Exactly.
the speed that we're at right now in the NFT space, like, they look at, I work in Decentraland a lot. I work in Festival District. Shout out to James. But it's like the people that we're showing this stuff to, they might not understand it sometimes. They're on their home computers, on like logging at Decentraland. It's like pretty heavy load, on their computer. So they're like, how they're not understanding, or they are sometimes, but just depending. But you recognize that you're not at the speed you want to be, to see this thing, like in everybody's house. or on everybody's phone, and everybody's probably AR glasses and stuff like that when the time comes for that. I think that we lose sight that the way computing works is it like multiplies fast.
Yeah.
And so
and it's still super nascent.
Yeah.
So like you're saying, like, and for Decentraland, I remember the first like big event when we had all the little quests you could do. And this was 3 years ago or something, at least a couple years back, and it was pretty laggy. Like you wouldn't always like get the reward, and like now you go through and it's like, compared to then, it's super smooth. You can do way more like functionality with like the games and mining and like, find one thing that unlocks another and get your POAP, and then that gives you like another drop or what, there's so much there. It's and like you said, computing kind of like does these jumps, and then it's like a bigger jump, and then it's a giant jump.
Like if you only logged in on launch, like that's what you're talking about on launch day when we had all the quests. If you logged in only on launch day, then you skipped time and came back 6 months later, it would have looked like a different world. And then you would have came back and looked 6 months later, it'd be like, wow. But when you're in it every day, you feel that. It's like when you watch your kid grow. You're like, the kid's not, this kid, he's been the same size, but somebody comes see your kid like, whoa, this kid is a giant, Oh yeah, I guess he did get a little bigger, didn't he? But so I think that's definitely where we are, and I think that where we're going is somewhere that people just can't understand. I don't think if I completely, will understand what it's going to look like in the future. I always like harp back on like AR glasses and stuff like that because, ever since I remember seeing HoloLens years ago, and being like, man, when that technology like gets to glasses size, it's over, and people want to say what they want to say or whatever, but you're going to use it. Just like everybody thought that they weren't going to use the internet like that. Like, oh, what if I put it in your phone? Like we didn't even have cameras in the phone at the time. If you had told somebody that they were going to have the internet in their phone like that, like, hey, like get out of here. These things weren't concepts that you could put together when you're not there yet. So just talking about how early we are in the game, like, that's what we mean when we say, oh, you're early in the game. You're early in the game because this is something that will be used in a much higher technology world. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, when, and we've got, big companies, Adidas, Nike,
almost every
like
big
L'Oreal, big makeup companies, big clothing companies, gaming companies. They're setting up in the metaverse. So if you want to follow, like you might want to like pay a little attention to some of those big brands coming in, because that's a big signal. Like being established on the internet with a good website early on. Like that's kind of what I see where we're at now. Whereas in another couple of years, if you don't have a metaverse spot for your company, for your business, you're going to be kind of lagging behind. Like right now, you're out in front if you have that. But wait a few years,
you're gonna have to rent some office building that I'm building,
right?
Like you can have a square for a lot of money,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely the way I believe we're going. I think that the up and down in the market, it is what it is. We don't, honestly, I really don't think about it too much besides when I want to pay bills.
Right. Or when there's a big drop coming that like you're excited about, or you need to do a little swap and you're like, damn, stuff's down. It's just like, that's the way it is now. It'll be back up. We've been through these cycles, and generally the peaks get higher and the bottoms get higher as well. So it's
and that's what we've
you
seen.
can pull back.
What
and
people
look.
are complaining about today is nothing compared to what we were dealing with in 2019, in 2020. 2020 was rough, like for real. Like a lot of things came out. Things did go well. That's why I keep talking about like in a bear market, there's still money. There's still money to be made.
Yep.
It's just we hit some rough patches in like say Decentraland's timeline. Like when I got in, it's like 3 cents mana. Land was going for not that expensive. Now things are completely different, and we're in the bear market now. But it's my land is still worth a lot more than it was ever worth before. I mean, I'm not selling it anyway because I work on it. But you know what I mean? if I always look at it that way, like if I was to sell my Decentraland land today, am I still? Oh yeah, you know, just leave it at that, like and then,
Well, yeah,
you know,
well in the profit zone for things like that. And that goes to show that like land in the metaverse has value, whether you picked up something early in Decentraland, crypto voxels, you got in on those early sandbox
sandbox,
land sales. All that is up, whether you're in like, oh, this horrible bear market or not, from the time a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago when you bought in, that's like well in the green still. So yeah,
exactly.
tokens go up and down. And like you were saying, yeah, I remember picking up, Mana at 3 and 4 cents, and then it was up to like, $3 or $4. And I was like, damn, I should have got more of that.
$6 or something like that at one point.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. And then like seeing it at under $1, like I'm like, oh, I'm picking
Right
up
now,
stuff. So like
yep.
that goes to show like where we are from. Like I remember when ETH was like $120, right? So
Yeah.
if that,
I
if
was
you're looking at
ringing
it
the
and you're,
alarm. I'm like calling people on the phone, like buy ETH right now. I sounded and looked crazy. Many of those people did not buy any ETH, and I learned my lesson about that's not how you onboard. you know,
right,
you
yeah,
onboard
yeah.
like EZinCrypto. You don't onboard like Franky Needles, like calling people on the phone, like you need to do this thing.
But then you get people like that I told about this stuff a long time ago, and I didn't even understand it as well. But I was like, "Yo, check out like Bitcoin and Ethereum, and maybe a couple of other things." And every once in a while you get one of those calls that's like, "Hey, yo, remember when you were telling me about the crypto stuff? Well, now I've been seeing it, on news and this and that, and so then they have the interest now, and it's like, man,
Yeah.
yeah, like I'll talk to you about it, but." Too bad you didn't listen back in the day when you thought I was like talking about some crazy fad.
You know what I like is that I get the other phone calls as well though, where they'll say like, "Remember you were talking to me about this thing?" Well, I started looking into it, and that's my favorite. It's not
Yeah,
the ones who I try to shake them by the shoulders. Is the ones that like I literally they took me for okay, that's cool, and then they started doing their own research. They go down the rabbit hole and then they find themselves knowledgeable in the space. And that's the best thing for me.
super rewarding.
I've had that be a case a few times. Again, I had to learn to stop shaking people out of the shoulders. They don't like it, you know.
Right.
So
Give me whiplash.
yeah, seriously. So like that, it's just an understanding. Of we gotta understand where we're going. That's fine, but you can't be so forward thinking that you forgetting that people need to go and learn it, on
Right.
their own. People need to
Right.
learn on their own. They're not gonna want to learn at your speed about your things. Your circumstances may be different. Like I was in a more like a dire, desperate situation when I got into NFTs and stuff like that. That it was like a fast pace. I had to learn it fast. I wanted to be involved. That kind of thing. So I think that my situation was different. I was speaking with a friend recently about that, and they were like, "You were in a spot, so it was almost like you needed NFTs." So it is what it is. You learned it and you went and did it, and it was it was
And yeah, like being in a spot where it's like kind of do or die, you jump in head first. Not
mm-hmm.
everybody kind of is, and I kind of jump in like fully into something if I'm going to do it anyways. That's a little just in my personality, I guess.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, some people are going to just kind of take a slow approach and check out something here and there and slowly kind of build up their knowledge base, which is a great way to also come in. But yeah, I think it's really important to let people kind of find find their tribe, like fit in, because like you
Yes.
said, not everybody's going to come in with the same interest or the same reason for like looking at this.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it is super rewarding though when you have people that were like, you give them a little bit of information and maybe some little tracks to go down, and they go do it on their own and come back and they're like, yo, yeah, I've been, I'm now building this project or something. Like I love it when that happens.
Yeah, definitely. So I really feel like we're on the right track, but the track is squirrely. So it's fine, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean this thing has definitely changed. I believe all of our lives. The people that got into this thing early, one way or the other. How before I let you go, like how has it really like changed your regular life? I know that we talk about all these different things, but your everyday regular life, what do you see is the most different from the time before NFTs and crypto, even
I
before
mean,
crypto, not just the money,
yeah,
obviously.
yeah. Well, it's given me, it's through like diving in head first and working for, couple of years pretty much to understand, have a really good grasp on the knowledge and have, experimented in different areas, kind of built up a reputation for being, like a honest dude that's not gonna like try and rug you or sell you some crazy shit. That has enabled me to be able to actually do, what I love to do and be paid for it. So I'm able to, basically earn a living now by being able to, moderate discords and host metaverse events and do these things. So that's a big change from like the early days where I was just doing it out of a passion and an interest and knowing that this was something that I really thought could, change the world, basically change lives for the better. That, a lot of the stuff I do is still just, from a point of, passion and excitement. And, definitely it's not all paid, but I do also have the opportunities of being paid for doing what I really enjoy to do. So that's pretty incredible in itself. That's life changing. Before I got into crypto, I went to school for like landscaping and I was designing and installing gardens and stuff. And I was down in Costa. But, what was it? We had economy crash in 2008 first.
2008, yeah.
And that didn't really hit my kind of work down there till like 2012 or something. And then I was like switching, looking for other work. And I basically had to start spending more time in the States. And I worked with like a CBD company and different things like that. And so really I was working still in areas I enjoyed, but it was it definitely was like it didn't quite fulfill me, in the way that doing the work I'm doing now in the metaverse and with crypto and onboarding people and hosting events and building community and platforms and creative products and all this. It's much more rewarding than like trying to slang some CBDs or like like do pull together maintenance crews to like take care of a property or like that I didn't like not like that work, but also I feel like I'm able to have it's crazy, but there's a certain amount of stability there too. And so that I can feel pretty solid about like the future and not be worried about like is this going to be enough work for me here with this company or that company, or if I lose these clients or those clients, like how do I fill those gaps to still pay the bills and stuff. So even though it's like financially kind of crazy, like schedule and lifestyle pretty crazy, super busy, traveling off to Miami or New York or Latin America, I love doing all those things. So right. It's definitely for me, I really like the opportunities and doors that it's opened for me in so many ways. So yeah, I feel like it's just super rewarding.
That's great. I mean, I never even thought about that, and I talk about that, but I never, I guess I never really put that into words. It's like you really do feel a security once you kind of ingrained yourself in this, especially how early we are. It's like you have an idea that your future is bright. You might have been working a job before where like that industry might have not been like going anywhere, like it was going to still be there into the future, it'll still be there when Web3 is a big deal, but that industry isn't like growing at a pace like this, whereas you look at this industry and we're involved with this thing and like, man, if I stick with this, there's almost endless opportunities going forward, so yeah, today's money might not be that great, but you really have an understanding that tomorrow's money is like, it's like the so many opportunities for do really what you're looking for.
Like this, and the support of the community. So I have like, even if like the things I'm doing right now, a couple of those went away for whatever reasons, financial or life emergencies or whatever, and I was like, oh man, I this project isn't able to help, for the work I do there, there's not any, cash coming in or something, for whatever reason. Like, there's so much support through this community, that I could just be like, yo, I really need to try and like find a little bit of paid work. And like, something would come through the network of friends like, oh, well, we're actually building something. We could, we got a paid position as a Discord mod, or like whatever it might be. There will be people out there that have my back 100%, and they would help me land like the next, thing that I would be able to keep moving forward with. Absolutely. So that's a huge thing that I did not have ever before.
Right. And that's what Maddie had spoke to me about, my interview with Maddie. Was he was saying that, like, for the people with the knowledge of Web3 stuff, you've got a paid position somewhere. Whether you know how to look for it or not, that it's one thing, but you do have a paid position somewhere, especially if, like you said, you have this, if you have a network of people in the community that have already done things or are working on projects or whatever. But even if you don't, Web2 companies are all looking to get into this, and they would pay for the simple knowledge that you have. Not your knowledge is first of all not simple. That's the thing. So the opportunities here are really great. I just think that you got to know what you're looking for and how to recognize that that's an opportunity. I'm doing this thing. You think you're just like, for instance, if you're a new person and you've been hanging out in the Discord now for 6 months or whatever, and you're now speaking a different language, but you don't notice it because you've been doing it. It's that thing. My kid is growing up, So it's like, now I'm speaking the lingo. I noticed it with one of my buddies. He speaks the language. I don't know if he knows that he's an expert yet. I wouldn't even call him an expert, but he knows a lot now. So he could definitely advise someone that's looking to get into the space, a company. It's like you need to understand what you're looking for and how to present your own opportunities. Kind of like, okay, I have this. When you start talking about it outside the space, and you're saying, I understand this and that. This is how you would do that. Then I've had so many people say, Franky, I want you to do whatever for me, invest money, whatever. And a lot of times I turn it down. I am completely happy with what I do, but that opportunity is there because obviously they're asking me. They would probably ask you as well.
Yep. And it's like you're saying, it's kind of being able to, it's such a different paradigm that you almost have to like be able to view your own value more clearly and be like, oh, well, I do have this knowledge base. And like you said, there's so many companies, projects, people that are trying to understand and get in, that they're willing to, put someone in their company with a position of, whatever it is, Web3 advisor, master, and you would be the one telling their people about how what you can, the tools that would be effective for that type of company, whether it's a clothing brand or almost anything. You've got people coming in, from real estate, and there's been a good amount of talk about insurance for a while now, and like everything is kind of going to this trustless ownership, that NFTs and blockchain give us. So if you have a deep understanding in any of these areas, that's open doors, opportunities right there. You just kind of need to be able to recognize it in yourself and maybe be able to go out and ask for a position at one of these places.
Right. I told a kid,
whether they're
I met a kid the other day, that he had just graduated from Tufts University out here in Somerville, where I'm at, and he graduated computer science. So I'm asking him what languages he knows and stuff like that, and I'm like, my man, like, you might want to seek out something in this area. I know to you it may look like our numbers are going down, but those it's hard for me to explain. Like we said, like let's say they said we've lost trillions of dollars in the last couple months. Like, we didn't have those trillions of dollars 2 years ago.
Right.
It didn't exist. So like, what did we really lose?
Right. If your bag's still bigger than when you started, or is more than what you originally invested, you're up.
Well, there was no jobs. 2020, there was no jobs. We weren't talking about jobs. We were like just doing stuff. You know, you were in the Discords, and you know, like you said, you were moderating Discords and stuff like. I don't know. I was just a person. And I was learning how to I was mostly learning how to model and do all that kind of stuff, the Decentraland stuff. So it's like,
and if you can model, build, code, any of those things now that people, you know, that were lucky enough to get in, you know, back in 2020, skills they've picked up, super valuable skills. You know, there's a shortage of builders out there in the metaverse. There's a shortage of, you know, Solidity coders, and it's like, you know, somebody that, if he's coming out of like, you know, computer science, basically he could just go out and get a job, like, you know, pick between a few of these different places that, you know, that are working on coding up, you know, whatever kind of features it is, or, you know, developing a bridge for this blockchain and that, like whatever it is, there's opportunity out there. And it's interesting that, you know, the view now from the outside could be like, oh yeah, well, you guys just like lost trillions. And like you just said, those trillions were made up over the last couple of years. And yeah, if a bunch of it's lost, there's still more value than there was previously.
And immensely more value. It's not like a little bit. It's not a small number, because I don't know what we were market cap of the NFT community was in 2020, but it was low. I know that. You know, it was. You were buying. I mean, you know, outside of certain artists that were doing well at the time, nobody was selling things for huge amount of numbers at the time.
No. You know, one of these PFPs would probably cover the whole market cap of 2020 if you took like a top PFP alone right now.
Definitely. And they didn't even exist at the time.
Yep. Pretty crazy.
Oh man, Easy. I don't want to hold you much longer. I really appreciate you doing this. I could talk to you for hours.
Man, I know. Great catching up. I'll have to bring you over onto one of my shows one of these days, fairly soon too.
Say the word, and just I'm there. You know, that's not a problem at all.
Cool.
Yeah, man.
I spy your. I can see in your background over your shoulder a elite box. And I'm wearing my elite hoodie right now.
Yeah, nice. I got mine upstairs. I try to never wear it. I wore the shirt out though. That shirt.
I know, dude. I literally had to get an extra because I know I'm gonna wear this thing out.
Yeah. The hoodie.
So I
never wear the hoodie. I wear it on like maybe I'll wear it on one of the podcasts one time, but I never bring it outside the house because the t-shirt that you sent me, I wore it out. So nice. But the boxes, I mean, I like the boxes just as much as I like the stuff, you know. Shout out to Whale Shark, that whole community, the whale community, and the community, man. Those guys, you know, they made sure they got me those early, like so early, it's ridiculous. So I really appreciate that. And shout out to Chief as well.
Huge part of the.
I don't know if you saw Chief has been releasing Axie Infinity raps videos.
Nice.
I thought that's pretty cool, man. So shout out to Chief, man.
I'm gonna check back in. I'm taking a note right now to check out his Axie raps, his newest ones. And huge shout out to Whale Shark and the whale community. They were, you know, a really big part of my journey, and I think, you know, did a lot of good for you know, pushing boundaries and bringing in more artists and just, you know, expanding kind of what the you know, what the purview is of, you know, what you can do with a social token and a community and, you know, NFTs. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, a lot of knowledge was passed around in that Discord, and I really appreciate it. That's why, you know, I gained a lot of like the broader knowledge, you know, in the space. So, again, Easy, we could go on for hours, man. And I know you got a busy schedule, and I'm not gonna hold you no more. I'm gonna go to some of these events that you're doing right now. And
I'm about to jump into another call and then a couple of events back to back. But always awesome to connect. I'll definitely see you around the metaverse, and we'll get back together again soon.
That sounds good. All right, thanks so much, man.
Peace, bro.
Peace.